This time on No Not the Mind Probe, episode number 73. Who shot JR?
Pew, 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 pew.
Whoa.
Well, welcome to No Not the Mind Probe, varmints. Yes, the Western one.
Oh, God.
Can we all do a cod Western accent?
Can't we all do a British Western accent? Well, I'm talking Western.
I was trying. So obviously, I'm a multi-talented voice-over person, as folks who listen to the podcast can tell.
Very obvious. Yep.
And, people who are good at voices and accents and things like that, you got to have a hook, right? What's your hook into something? And the challenge of obviously starting cold every time with my approach to my new reading of No Not the Mind Probe is I can't do my hook. But I was just trying to think, what's my Western hook? Like my Scottish hook is right, and and my Irish hook is it's a quarter to five and all that. But like I'm trying to figure out what's my Western hook. Varmint. I mean, we can do.
I say roundabout.
Oh yeah, you do it more of a bassy sort of.
Well, because I think of Sam Elliott.
Oh yeah, you don't open your mouth. You're just kind of. All right, and you think
about a mustache getting in the way.
It's got to have a big mustache. Yeah. This is a podcast, folks, where we watch and rank every single Doctor Who story ever. And you know what? We're not, I'm just thinking back to our last episode. We're not afraid to shy away from the bold recommendations.
Yeah.
Actually, I was thinking about it. So if we had a producer, which, folks, it may surprise you to know we do not. But if we
do not,
did,
no.
What they would have said.
It's so professional around here, you would think. But
they would have, but we have 5 grips. I don't know why we did that.
It's a union thing. They tell us we have to, and it's
that if the producer were listening to us during the recording of the last episode, and then the sort of post green room, chat, I imagine what they would say is, "Okay, guys, during the last podcast, the recorded part." You recommended Steven Spielberg. You spent some time talking about Steven Spielberg movies and recommending that people watch some of the most famous movies ever made. Then when you stopped recording, then you went into an interesting discussion about independent films and new films that were coming out and timely and relevant features.
No, I also said I saw the first John Wick and didn't really like it that much. That was my hot take. That was my lukewarm, cold, served cold take.
Sure.
What's your name and who are you?
My name is John Grant. Hi. And I am a lifelong Doctor Who fan. I've been watching it for 38 years, which is an extraordinary amount of time.
That is a very long time. My name is Porter Mason. John's been asking me to watch Doctor Who for 26 years, which relative to 38 is
barely a drop in the bucket.
Drop the bucket.
Yeah.
A couple years ago, I finally said yes.
Come on, darnation.
Each episode of this here podcast, we look at 2 stories. We're going through the new Doctor Who series in order, and our Doctor Who sommelier.
Yeah, that's a hard one to keep the accent. Actually,
yeah. You gotta put some they're putting air quotes on it when they're saying, "Oh, look at Mr. Sommelier over there." Here. We'll find a pairing with the classic story. John, what's going on?
Well, as you may have gleaned from your careful listen to the beginning here.
From the fun we're having.
We're doing Westerns. It's a Western day. And I'm not talking about Western omelets, although we should have done a Western omelet segment.
Ooh, I could go for a Western omelet right now.
All right, folks, actually, we're going to take a quick break. And the video just cuts and we're eating omelets. It's a Western theme. Because
that's a good diner order that I forget. It's like one of those. So I always go to diners and I look at the Bible-sized menu that they have, and then I look at it for like 30 minutes, and then I'm like, I'll have a turkey club. And my wife's always like, why did you look? It's the same. You just always get this. Or I get like one of the, like a Reuben, a very standard thing. A Denver omelet.
Western omelet.
Is another one. Yeah. Western omelet. Wait, what's Western? Oh, does Western have beef?
Like ham, onions, and peppers and stuff.
Yeah, that's what I want. That's Western.
Okay, I'm pretty sure
that's what I want.
Yeah.
So I'll have that and then a Diet Coke. Thank you.
Well, I always order my go-to at all restaurants including very fancy Michelin star ones, is a Rooty Tooty Fresh and Fruity. And if I panic, my panic move is a Rooty Tooty Fresh and Fruity.
So you go and you're like, I'll have the filet mignon, but I'd like it smothered, and covered.
You gotta have a fallback. I don't have any transition from that to this. I'm trying. We are going to the Old West today.
Yeah, we'll be transported by these episodes.
They're coming back. We've got Matt Smith, and of course Arthur Darvill, and of course Karen Gillan or Gillian, depending on what you know her as. And in a town called Mercy, and I've paired that with, and I think this will be this is a legendary episode on different levels. The first Doctor, Stephen, and Dodo they take us to the OK Corral in the Gunfighters.
Again, they just transport us. Buckle in. I'm going to recap these episodes.
Buckle up there, doggies, I think.
It's just doggies, but it's spelled like doggy. All right. This is a town called Mercy, series 7, episode 3. It aired on the 15th of September 2012. Story number 228 out of 200. I'm sorry, out of 300 episodes. We already mentioned Rory, Amy, the 11th
Some
Doctor.
Western people,
11th, right? Am I
cast of Yellowstone?
11th. Yeah, 11th.
I don't know.
Cast of Yellowstone, Sam Elliott. A lot of people in this.
It was originally called Lonesome Doctor.
That would have been a better title for the episode, John. Where were you 10 minutes ago?
I try to get in the writer's room, but they never let me.
Oh, yeah. You're a writer's assistant on this show, right? I believe.
I should be. I know enough.
All right, here's the clip from a town called Mercy.
He wouldn't. I genuinely don't know.
Doctor? Doctor?
Let him come back, Doctor.
Or what? You won't shoot me, Amy.
How do you know? Maybe I've changed. I mean, you've clearly been taking stupid lessons since I saw you last. I didn't mean to do that.
Everyone who isn't an American, drop your gun.
We could end this right now. We could save everyone right now.
This is not how we roll, and you know it. What's happened to you, Doctor? When did killing someone become an option?
Jex has to answer for his crimes.
And what then? Are you going to hunt down everyone who's made a gun or a bullet or a bomb?
But they keep coming back. Don't you see? Every time I negotiate, I try to understand. Well, not today. No. Today, I honor the victims first. His, the Masters, the Daleks, all the people who died because of my mercy.
See, this is what happens when you travel alone for too long. Well, listen to me, Doctor. We can't be like him. We have to be better than him.
Yeah.
All right. This is a recurring. This is continuing the theme from last week that we mentioned, where the Doctor is not choosing life; he's choosing death.
Choose life. Isn't that?
I don't know. Do we feel like there's something that's really driving him toward that?
I don't. Yeah, I mean, it's like this is what happens when you travel alone, and it's like, okay, well then probably what we're not seeing would be kind of interesting. Hey, wouldn't it be great if he didn't travel without Amy and Rory? I
know
that would make for some interesting stories.
We are hurtling at a snail's pace toward the last episodes of Amy and Rory, and you know what? We're gonna really miss them when they're gone. It's just. Anyway. Okay, so
because
we
when
arrive.
they introduce Bamey and Maury, it just seems derivative. I'm gonna be honest with you. That's the next campaign.
Honestly, the reason I'm so grumpy about this is just because they introduced Clara. She was there, and then they just
they're like, "Hey, would you like something new?" Yeah. Well, no, she's dead now.
I was like, oh, okay. Who's this? Never mind. Never mind.
Dead.
What's all this talk about Clara? She was never in it.
You'll get what you're given, and you'll like it.
All right, so we're in a town in the American West where there's some accents. Some are all right. Some are, I don't know. At any time Doctor Who does not just the Western, but like American in general.
Yeah. Well, Perry set the bar pretty high. And then the Sixth Doctor's companion Perry, she's obviously the
paragon. Yeah, that's true. But it is funny to think about why the American accents and just sort of the feel of Americana is so off. And the reason it's odd is because it feels like every American show is actually all British actors.
Yeah.
And you don't even notice. You're like, wow, they're so good at
Hugh
this.
Laurie can do a perfect American house, and then you're just.
And I think I think it ends up being more the tone and feel of it. It's not just the accents; it's more the tone and feel of it. Where it's like, well, those shows are being run by Americans, but then they're just putting these British actors in it who, well, they just get good at the accent.
Whereas here, it's ridiculous. This idea that anyone would care about how many people got shot with guns, right? That does not come across in an American show, right? Babies wander around shooting people, and everybody's like, "Ah, this is adorable." The baby with the gun.
That's funny. There. Let's put it on TikTok. So Rory, Amy, and the doctor arrive. They're there, and they find out that this town has been terrorized by this big robot gunslinger who they call the gunslinger, and they've been he's been terrorizing the town and saying no one can come, no one can go, because he's demanding that they turn over, quote, the doctor. Okay, so we thought, oh, well, he's the doctor, here it is. No, what we find out is no, there's another actual alien there in the town who's now serving as a doctor in the town. And that's who they're talking about, Jex, Collar Jex. And we found out that Jex is, what is the race he is?
I forget what his race is, but he's a war criminal, that's for sure.
He says it at the beginning. He was like, and the doctor's like, oh, this race of people. Well, yes, he is a war criminal, but what we find is that like they're suspicious of the town at first when they're walking through it because it has certain modern accoutrements, like there's electricity, there's different things there. And what we found is that he's crash landed on the ship. And then he's just basically been helping out this town. Like he's been, not causing a big stink, but just trying to help them. He's added little things to make their lives easier. And okay, so then what we do find is that yes, he's a war criminal. He's escaped the planet that he was on. Where on this planet, he and others were doing weird experiments to create military cyborgs, essentially.
Like you do.
And the gunslinger is one of them. And so the gunslinger is, I'm not sure why is chasing after him. Was it programmed to do so, or was it? It gained sentience.
Yeah, I realized, hey, what happened, and I think he's hunted down everybody else who did the experiments, and this is like the last one, right? It's kind of a Israeli intelligence going after the Munich,
right?
So this is actually a parable. Spielberg. So again, the man is amazing.
The genius, guys. Check out Steven Spielberg. While you're at it, Coppola, not bad. Actually, there's more. That's
more complicated. Actually,
more hits and misses there. But okay, so yeah. So now we're at this turning point of like, well, what do we do? This town is basically all like being terrorized because of this doctor, but if we give him up, he'll be killed. He'll definitely be killed. But he's a bad guy. But he's also helped out this town. So it's sort of so ultimately the doctor finally decides that, and this is the speech we just heard, he's like, look, no, we got to give him up. And sorry, yeah, he's gonna die. He's done terrible things, and we need to free up this town. And Amy gives that's the moment she gives the speech, right? Yeah,
and we're only like halfway through the episode, so it's kind of like, oh, the big turning point. Oh, all right, yeah.
So he does it, but then what happens is the sheriff, who's been sort of helping them the whole time, and is your very classic Western
mustache, hat,
best guy, most moral person in the entire universe, sheriff,
he gets killed.
When the cyborg gunslinger goes to kill off Jex, the alien who built him, the sheriff jumps in front of the blast and is killed.
And he's again, this is it's surprisingly early in the episode, and I think it's kind of unfortunate because I think the sheriff is the best character in the thing. It's like he understands the guy's an alien, like he knows about that, and he's like okay with it because I mean, like it's like, oh, here's the most interesting, and then oh, he's dead.
So ultimately, and as he dies, very Western move here too, he gives his badge to the doctor and says, you're now in charge of
because
Mercy.
That is how succession
you figure it out.
In law enforcement works. Whoever you hand the badge to ends up running the town.
So if a cop runs up to you and just like throws a badge at you, that's like a trick like the Roma would do where they throw the baby at you. You know, that's a classic thing. Same thing with cops. They'll throw up and they'll throw a gun and a badge at you. And if you catch it, you're now a cop. And that's it. And then if someone robs your own house, they can say like, well, sorry, you were the cop.
You should have stopped.
It gets very complicated. It gets very complicated.
Then you immediately start shooting black people, and you're like, I don't even know why I'm doing this. And
like, well, it comes with the job.
Don't do that, folks.
So this works with this works with all jobs too. If someone throws a briefcase at you, then you're a lawyer. Like that's just it.
No, I've more than once had someone just hand me a scalpel in the middle of the street, and then I'm just like, great. And then it's like, this is going to take an hour at least. Yeah.
As a privacy expert, what do you throw at someone to have them succeed you in your position?
A copy of the general data protection regulation from Europe. You just kind of throw the GDPR.
And that'll knock you out. That'll knock you right out. Throw the GDPR at them. That's funny. Okay, so
thank you. I try.
So here's the solution that the doctor comes up. He ultimately says, look, he talks more to Jex and is like, look, he's remorseful about this. I don't just want to kill him. I've had a change of heart. And Amy's like, oh, okay. Somebody's speech work. Yeah. Good.
And Rory's just like playing solitaire in the background.
No, Rory probably died. Sadly, Rory died
several times. Like 3 times in one episode. It was a little over the top.
And they broke up, but their love is also undying. So they come back to it. So yeah, this is why I rate this episode bad. They didn't explore the theme enough of Amy and Rory's love. Like, do they love each other?
Are they gonna stay together or not? I don't know. I still don't know. It's up in the air to me. Yeah.
What about Rose and the doctor? I mean, like, let's finally explore these things we've all been wondering about.
Rose just showed up. Hey. And then she was in love with Rory, and then that would be a twist. I would watch that.
No, I like this. I like this. How awesome would that be? Rory has an affair with Rose, but it's like a complex thing. It's like they actually we're actually in love. Like Rory is not going to be with Rose, and the fans, you guys have to deal with it. Amy has been left. And Rory is, but it's like a good relationship. Like it's for the. These are interesting things.
The doctor is he going to finally tell Rose he loves her, but then the doctor falls in love with Rory.
Oh yes. Let's
watch that episode instead of this one.
Okay, so the doctor they've come up with a plan to basically because they still have to. Now we've decided not to kill Jax. Great. How do we
now? What? Yeah.
But the town's still terrorized by this. Cyborg.
Don't worry.
We decide to throw off the cyborg by everyone in the town does a I am Spartacus thing, and they all dress up like this alien race. It confuses the cyborg. It allows the guy to escape.
It's kind of
the alien Jax.
It's like they created the fake town and
yeah.
Far off from Blazing Saddles, and surprisingly, uses the N-word as many times as the movie Blazing Saddles. It was just a shocking move, I thought, in this story.
So then this is the end. We go through all of that to do that. Jax gets on his ship and then says, you know what, though? I really have done bad things, so I'm going to commit suicide. So it's like, okay, well, then you could have just done that. Like, what?
You had to grow to that. Like, all of us, a lot of people, and I think this is an important message that people miss. Suicide is actually the culmination of a growing experience.
Oh, sure. Great. Oh, God. Please, no, don't listen to any of this.
No, but so I did know about it. It continues. It's a classic Doctor Who trope of they realize they're stuck in this situation, the writers, and they're just like, someone sacrifices themselves. And isn't that wonderful? And it's like, is self-sacrifice really that wonderful all the time?
And again, it is. That could be fine too. It just seems like, well, why don't we just do that then? Like what, like all these townsfolk at home washing the ink off their face, like, wow, we really all came together and helped him out. How's he doing? Oh, he immediately committed suicide.
Like, we all risked our lives for that.
Anyway, by the way, the town all loved him because he was very helpful to them.
But then the doctor killed him.
So last minute, the doctor convinces the gunslinger, who is also going to self-destruct, because just suicide is all the rage all of a sudden with this particular people from the planet. But then the doctor says, "Why don't you stay here and protect this town?" And to this
Mm.
day, somehow he is, which makes no sense.
He's an immortal cyborg, I guess, and as long as no one asks about it. Yeah.
Right, exactly. I'm saying, so he's just hanging out in the desert. There's just a scary robot, and the town knows.
Right. Yeah, they're all aware of the robot.
They're all aware.
It's sort of remarkable that the town has no sheriff. Because the only thing you need a sheriff for is to kill bad guys. It's not really any other law enforcement functions.
That's right. Anyway, that's that show.
That's that show. This is by Toby Whithouse, who's definitely had some better episodes. This is entirely filmed in Spain. So that's a fun fact, because apparently and they have apparently in the deserts of Spain or whatever, in places that look like this, they have whole fake Western towns. Apparently it's a very common filming location for Europe and whatnot, who want to film a Western style thing, but don't want to go to the actual West. They go to Spain instead. So there you go. Yeah, I like the sheriff. I think the sheriff was underused. I liked him. The doctor speaks horse. That was kind of funny. I did actually like Amy. At least the story wasn't about Amy and Rory. It was actually a little refreshing, because even the last one, it was Asylum of the Daleks. It's about their divorce. Dinosaurs and Spaceship is about the father, right, being there, and there's a little bit of the dynamic of them constantly traveling and blah blah. And then,
well, that was one of 7 things that was explored during the episode.
But then this one, it wasn't about them at all. They just happened to be there. I mean, they were with him. It was more of they're just companions. And yes, Amy plays. I mean, Rory checks out basically, but Amy plays a role in convincing him that something's weird or off about what the doctor's doing. But they're just playing companion roles again. It's it's finally not about them. That's kind of nice, I thought. I mean, instead of a story, there was no storyline about Amy and Rory, right? It's it's a great. I love the show Community, and there's a great episode where they're taking, it's in the second, third season, they're taking the anthropology exam or something like that, and Shirley goes into labor during the thing, and it's just some of the side characters, as the whole class now becomes about Shirley having the baby. Some side characters in the back going, "Oh, I thought for a minute we were just going to have one class that wasn't all about them." But yeah, and then I think this is, so I mentioned this in the last episode about whether the doctor killing the bad guy that hijacked the Silurian ship, whether that was weird. And as I said, people reacted to that online and stuff after the episode dropped. And then clearly they picked that up here. And it's is this what you do now? You kill the bad guys instead of negotiating with them, or as more often letting other people kill them, so then you didn't actually kill them. It's just sort of another thing. But again, yeah, as we sort of said, it's but okay, but if something happened to make him do that, that would have been kind of interesting to see, rather than just hey, off screen something happened and turned him into a homicidal maniac. Don't worry about it, everybody. Why would that be interesting television to you? Get over it.
That's, I think, what it is that as much as sometimes the season-long arcs can kind of build up and be disappointing, it feels like we're without an arc right now. We're I don't know where we're headed.
That's true.
Because it seemed like the arc was Amy and Rory is tied up in a bow and that's done, and then it's except there's more, and then it's but I what is?
Well, I mean, you've got them dealing with themselves in Asylum of the Daleks, and sort of their relationship, and you've got the dinosaur thing on a spaceship. You got the father talking about revealing that they've traveled a lot. And with the doctor, and that this is, and they do comment, I think, that it's affected their lives or something like that. Here, I think so we're building up to them departing, obviously, but here the link is kind of, I think maybe it is this is what happens when you're on your own, right? It's maybe it creates a slight tension of they should leave him, but Amy knows if you leave him, he turns into a complete homicidal maniac, I guess.
But from our perspective watching the show, he does not appear to be on his own.
Yes,
he's
never actually
not.
It'd be great if we had a couple episodes where he was on his own and then he just started killing people. Like he suddenly became like a slasher from like a horror movie, and then that would be an interesting. It'd be like, whoa! He just murdered that entire summer camp full of counselors.
I think he should find River, and they should just have a nice, suburban life for a little while.
He's a teacher, and she's a hilarious. I don't know. I'm trying to set up a good sitcom here.
Also, who's taking care of River the baby at this point, or is that?
We skipped all that, right? Because then it was just they took the baby away at the Demon's Run, right? And then the baby became River, or the baby became the child.
So they don't raise River.
Yeah, no. They are friends with Mel's, remember? So they kind of raise River as their friend, so their child.
Okay. I don't know.
Okay.
I'm going to move on to the classic episode.
Yes. I'm intrigued by this.
The Gunfighters. Yeah. So this is it is so much. It is since season 3. This is story number 8. It aired in 1966, the 30th of April through the 21st of May. It's a 4-parter. It's the 25th of the 300 stories, and we have the first Doctor, and we have Dodo. Right? Dodo. Sorry, Dodo.
Jojo's the monkey they traveled with briefly, and that flopped.
Dodo and Steven are our little gang of merry folk. And we have a clip from this verse, so we're going to play that right about here.
So, you finally got back.
Howdy, Bat. Everything quiet in town?
Everything except that rattlesnake friend of yours, Holiday, blew in this morning. Who are your friends, Wyatt?
Well,
quite so. Allow me, sir, to introduce Miss Dodo Dupont, Wizard of the Ivory Keys, and Stephen Regret Tenor, and lastly, sir, your humble servant, Dr. Caligari.
Dr. Who?
Yes, you're quite right. I've just been satisfying the sheriff here that we're a humble troupe of travelling players, unfortunately, sir, at the moment in between engagements.
Well, if I was you, I'd keep it travelling. There ain't no theater in Tombstone.
Oh, is that so? Oh, well, that's no matter, no. You see, my prime purpose for visiting your city, sir, was to avail myself the services of a dentist.
A dentist?
Yeah.
Well, then Doc Holliday's your man. Where is the doc, Bat?
Open yourself a surgery right along the street. Walk that way, friend. You can't miss it.
Oh, I'm vastly obliged to you, Sheriff. Come, fellow thespians. No doubt I shall be very glad to see you. We'll meet you later on, Mr. Webb.
I love that it is a running joke that he keeps referring to Wyatt Earp as Mr. Werp. Like, thank you, Mr. Werp.
All right, I'll do my best to. I mean, the plot is not as important as the.
Are you going to do it in the style of the Ballad of the Last Chance Saloon?
Oh. No. Let's just say right now that I believe from the opening bars of this, the first episode through the 4th, they play segments of this song.
The Ballad,
what is it?
The Ballad of Chance Saloon.
Ballad of the Last Chance Saloon.
Upon the sawdust in the last chance, and it's fast and it's slow and at one point the characters in the episode sing it.
Yeah, so first it's played in the background, which is jarring because that's not usual. I mean, there's score, but this isn't score. Yeah. This is a song being played. Then you realize, which sounds weird. Then as the episodes move on, you realize, the lyrics are, because at the beginning the lyrics just repeat the same thing over and over, the same chorus. Then the lyrics start to change and are about the story that you're kind of listening to, and you're like, oh, okay. Then once that kind of breaks, it just is always that. They're always just, it continually is changing as the plot changes. Then yes, the people in the saloon make Dodo and Steven sing the song. Then the woman who's the singer at the saloon says, hey, stop singing the song. I'm going to sing the song. And you realize that's who's been singing the song all along. And it just keeps going. And it's so terrible. It was driving me slowly insane.
A lot of people don't like this song. A lot of people don't.
Well, anyway, the deal is we're in Tombstone, and I don't know if the Clanton brothers is that a known thing or was that invented for this? Do you know
No,
that?
this is the OK Corral. Yeah, the Clantons. It's the Clanton brothers.
That is the Clanton.
Yep. And Johnny Ringo. Those are all, everybody's real. And then Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday were against them. And there's a shootout in the OK Corral. It's a real historic
Okay, so this is the build up toward that. Okay, right. So it's more historical, not just taking the theme. Right. So they're in Tombstone. They're looking for Doc Holliday to settle a score. And so we get there, and it really does feel like this was pitched as, what if the doctor is there with Doc Holliday, and then they get confused because the doctor, Doc Holliday. I think that would be a lot of fun.
I mean, it is. It is a comedy. This is an outright comedy. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, I did not find it particularally funny, but
from the punny titles. I mean, there's the first episode is called "A Holiday for the Doctor," and he meets Doc Holliday.
Yeah, that's great.
Also, I remember. So this is a pickup from at the end of the Celestial Toymaker, which you probably love. I mean, you love so much that you probably think about it all the time.
Yes, I did love that.
Remember at the end, he eats a sweet and breaks his tooth or whatever, and then this is the pickup from that.
Well, that's great. Yeah. So as we heard in the clip, they're here so he can go, not to interfere with or be part of the shootout at the OK Corral, but because his toothy hurts, and he's going to go to the dentist.
You're a Time Lord from the far distant future, and you land in the Old West, you say, "Well, this is probably the place to get my tooth filled."
So he goes into the Doc Holliday's, dentistry storefront, and they tell him, it's like, "Oh, great, we've never had a client before." And I guess that whole scene, it's funny that you mentioned it's like it's ostensibly played for comedy. They're going for comedy because that whole scene has the feel of like a sketch, right? It's like it is like, oh, you're going, oh, I'd like to get my tooth fixed. It's like, oh, great, we've never had a patient, like
it's like the Carol Burnett dentist sketch, basically.
But it's not funny, and it's not played overly for laughs. But it's
remember at the one point he's like, we don't have any anesthetic. Do you want a slug of liquor? And hands him his flask, and the doctor's like, no. And then he's like, okay. And then Holliday takes a big slug of it himself, and the doctor gives him like this comedy book.
No. Right. I can't explain it. Maybe it's just that it wasn't played well, like, or in my opinion, like it wasn't. It never came across as this is funny, and partly maybe it was because like the way it was and the way it was filmed at the time. If this, to your point, if it was the Carol Burnett show, there would be an audience and a laugh track
telling you,
and so it just feels weird. It doesn't, or there would be music indicating the fun of it. This just feels like or like a comedy movie would have kind of a bouncier soundtrack to kind of take you through
the funny ballad.
And like, oh God, no, it's not funny. It's terrible. It wasn't funny to me, and so that just colored the whole thing. Anyway, it all goes through. They capture Dodo, not capture, but they essentially hold Dodo and Steven hostage.
Yep.
Because also there's a thing like Dodo and Steven are like, yay, we're in the Old West, and they put on like silken cowboy uniforms. Like essentially they go to one of those
like a costume
Halloween pop-up stores and get like. And so then the people in the saloon are laughing at them, and they're like, you play piano and sing. And so then Steven's singing for a while. The funny thing is Steven, I think, is obviously has a British accent, and then is being like trying to pretend to have the Western accent. He really sounds about the same as the other people having
the accents are a bit
the real Western people.
Yeah.
So that's all over the place. Yeah, and then again, they mix in some of if it's comedy, they're mixing in some of these real moments of like Johnny Ringo.
Yeah,
and
he's not. He's in a
get
different
shot.
show.
Yeah, and
shoots
and
the
so
bartender.
It's all tonally off.
So it's curtains
there is the moment
for Charlie.
Oh God, yeah, they played that a lot. So then they do have the moment where there is the mistaken of like, oh, they're mistaking the doctor for Doc Holliday. And
he's in the jail. They come to get him out.
The doctor tries to calm things down, but they still have a gunfight at the OK Corral. Do they talk a little bit about that, saying like, oh, it's like kind of a fixed point in time thing of like, yeah, nothing we're really gonna
he
do
doesn't.
about that.
Overall, they don't seem particularly concerned. Just kind of like, and you do get, yes, you get that final.
He's just mainly concerned about his tooth the entire time,
and he's sort of mildly annoyed by the whole thing. He has a joke where people keep trying to give him guns, and he keeps being like, "No, stop it! Like, stop any guns."
He is. I do like him because he is like just sort of this doddering old man who doesn't really have time for the things going on around him.
Doesn't fully
so
seem to care that they're. And he's just like, "I'm just trying to get out of here." And then
the funniest thing about him that is his character, and what's funny is that I find him amongst I only know 11 of them, but amongst the 13 doctors, it's like, oh yeah, this is an interesting niche that he fills. But what's hilarious to me is like, he was the first doctor and it became hugely successful off of that. Like people are like, I like this old man who's grumpy and doesn't want to, and like is not
can't seem to remember his lines
can't seem to remember his lines, and it's like not a standard superhero. He's not like, it's really fascinating that this show took off.
Grandfatherly guy,
it's so different, and I think it is good that they sort of have now tried out different doctor personalities. If it had always been that, I think that would have started to wear thin.
Grandpa wouldn't have worked him.
Like just always Matlock, the time traveler.
I'm thinking about it. Like, can you imagine the steamy Hartnell Rose romance?
Oh my God. I mean, we'll get to it when we get to him next, but is the 12th Doctor is he older than Hartnell?
He was about the same age, but he certainly does not come off as quite as.
Does he act at all old?
No, not really. In fact, he kind of goes the other way, like a young person trapped in an old person in a way. But yeah, in real life, they were, I think, roughly the same age, but obviously, medical science being what it is, he was a little bit better.
Anyway, so yeah, again,
it's the exciting gunfight at the end where they seem to walk in slow motion down the street while people fire guns at them and no one hits them.
Yeah, right. Well, that may be true. Guns were terribly like there was no aim to them whatsoever.
Yeah, at the time, so this one is gather around, folks. I'm gonna pull out a little.
Tell me about. There's a book that's just been.
Here. So if you're watching on the YouTube, you can see this. So I don't have to tell you what it is. But if you're not watching, if you're on the podcasting,
it's the Doctor Who?
Doctor Who Celebration, and this is the 20th anniversary, sort of nonfiction book, kind of a history of Doctor Who that was published in 1983. I bought this in like 83, 84. It cost $21.95. I had to save quarters for it to buy it at Bookland in Concord, New Hampshire.
So accounting for inflation, that was $7,000 now. Yeah, in today's dollars.
Yeah. So, and this was like one of the first. It's like there's another one called The Making of Doctor Who in the 70s, but this is like the next sort of big behind the scenes sort of, and it's got biographies of the doctors, it's got histories, it's got all this kind of stuff. But famously, it has in it a program guide at the back, which basically provides a short couple paragraphs on every single story to that point. So from an unearthly child to the King's Demons, right before the 20th anniversary story. And this is before VHS. And we just tuned in on the wireless at nights and we listened to Uncle Milty and went to bed. But so for a lot of Doctor Who fans, myself included, who only were watching stuff on PBS or whatever, some of these were the first exposure we had to any of these stories and what they were about. And they don't. So the guy Peter Haining, who's the author, clearly like had some information about them. Was also just kind of going from memory, I think, of stuff that he did. So for many years, the only thing people knew about the Gunfighters, for a lot of fans, was what was written in this book. So I'm going to read you the entry for this. It's I remember, again, this is what people thought. So The Gunfighter, Serial Z by Donald Cotton, director Rex Tucker. If ever reviewers feel tempted to pour scorn on the attempts by America to emulate British costume drama, a good lesson in humility could be learned from studying this serial as a demonstration of how the British cannot do Westerns. It was billed as a show about the gunfight at the OK Corral, but it was more the massacre of the OK Corral. So badly was this show received by the public that its audience viewing figures dipped below the horizontal axis line on the ratings graph, and the Doctor Who producer's office for the only time in the program's history. Not true. What made this serial so poor is the cumulative effect of so many bad points, which on their own would be forgiven in most other stories. The script was pure Talbot Rothwell. The acting was not even bad vaudeville, and the direction was more West Ham than West Coast. It was not good. It was bad, and it was ugly. It was certainly the story that decided in the mind of new producer Innes Lloyd that the time had come to rethink the policy of using historical stories in Doctor Who's framework. So that's what all of us knew about it. So in my head for many, many years, it was, this is the worst Doctor Who story in history.
And just understanding this, we've talked about this time period for you, but basically because the only thing you could see was whatever was aired on PBS.
And they didn't really.
There were selected VHS collections.
They didn't know at this time there were no VHS. It wasn't. I think maybe Revenge of the Cybermen had come out, but there weren't many, and certainly no early ones. And so
it's just whatever.
And PBS was mostly cycling from like color ones, so mostly doing Pertwee to current Tom Baker and maybe Peter Davison, and then back. And it's only later that they got some of the older black and white ones. So then we kind of see these. But it was probably another 20 years before I saw the Gunfighters. But so for a long time, it was just accepted by fans like this is the worst Doctor Who story ever. It was a complete disaster. So then when I saw it, I think in my head I was like, it's not that bad.
Expectations game. Yeah.
Okay. And yeah, I mean, I think it's a comedy. It's written as a comedy. So I was interested to see what your reaction would be. It's interesting. It's written as a comedy. It's by Donald Cotton, who did the Romans, which we watched, which is also a comedy. So clearly trying to be funny. The novelization is actually very funny as well. I like there's a little bit of ambition to it. So if you think about it, it's all done in studio, and they have live horses come in a couple scenes. They have multiple levels, right, at the gunfight, and like they have the outdoor. Clearly, there's like walking along the town to the saloon at the gunfight. I think that was done somewhere else, but they have people on multiple levels and stuff like that, which is in the 1960s TV, that was a thing. It was like 2 levels, never. That's impossible. I think William Hartnell is really good. I think he's funny. I love he keeps saying Mr. Werp. He orders a glass of milk at the bar. He's getting upset. People keep handing him guns. There's a nice little things in there. And there's a great scene. Dodo is never great as a companion, and they get rid of her shortly after this. But they had the great.
Oh God! Did they shoot her?
That's the weird. Steven just shoots her, and then they walk out of it. Then they shove her out of the TARDIS and take off. It's a dark episode. No, but there's a great thing where I think her and Doc Holliday and the barmaid there, whatever, they run off to avoid the Clantons, and then she basically pulls a gun on Holliday and says, you have to take me back. I have to go back to my companions. And he sort of charmingly says, okay, yes, I'll do it. At gunpoint. And then she's like, oh, thank goodness. And then like kind of collapses into him and hands him the gun. And he's like, okay. So yeah, I think there are funny little moments. A lot of people do not like the ballad. I think it's kind of catchy. But I don't know. So I don't know. Again, it's hard to fully capture how much that preconceived notion was in my head, because of course I was obsessed with this book, the Celebration book, and I read it so many times over and over and over again, and like this is all I knew about some of this Doctor Who, and you just kind of accepted it as like a conventional fan dogma. And so yeah, then to have this, then it opened my eyes. It's like, oh, could the holy book be wrong about other Doctor Who episodes? I don't know. And so yeah, I think when I saw it, I was just like, oh, it's not that bad. But yeah, I don't know. Like, what would my reaction be if I just came across this in the normal run of episodes, as you have? What would my reaction?
And then the interesting thing, similar when we do have these theme shows that are very tightly connected, like we did last episode, and then this one, there is the additional context of kind of watching it alongside the modern one or whatever. Yeah. And in this case, my feeling was they just don't do this well. Like even the new one is like, yeah, this still isn't very good. But the old one was like, to me, went past like, they're not doing this Western very well. The accents are really bad, whatever. And like, that's happened before and other things they've tried to do. I do understand how they might take on some of the historical stuff, because while I really enjoyed some of the historical stuff, sometimes it just feels like, what are we trying to do here exactly? But so this one was bad, but I think what they said, where they mentioned it was somewhat of a perfect storm of different things going on. It's like the Western wasn't very good. Trying to do the historical aspect here didn't work. And then to your point earlier, I get that they were trying to do a comedy, but it just really wasn't working. And so the tone was off. And then that song, it like it was the reason why it worked so poorly for me are the ones that don't work well. I feel like they're ones that are just very middling and just kind of meh, nothing in particular. And they could fall somewhere anywhere in our rankings, depending upon if you kind of like the people involved. We're like, it's kind of middling, but it was, Tom Baker, so it was fun, or, whatever. And then there are ones that are like really bad objectively, but it's sort of like, this is so fun. Like it goes around so bad it's good. It kind of goes around the other end. And this one, it was like, it's bad, and it just started making me annoyed and mad.
That is
like
also,
I was just
that's
like,
always a risk,
like watching this. And that was this one to me. It was like, by the end of it, I was like, I just don't like this. and well,
then you're lost.
The people
right?
involved,
then you're done. You're like, yeah, that's it. Yeah.
I'm done. And then the people involved don't save it for me, because while I do like the first Doctor, Steven and Dodo are just kind of like, Dodo's actively kind of annoying, and Steven's not that great either, to be honest. And so it's just like, I don't like anything. I don't like any of this. I don't want to watch any of this.
Well, what's interesting here is
that's why,
and of course, okay, I can't recreate it, but this is in season 3. This is the season 3, and they've got new producers. The original producers have left. The new producers are not huge fans of William Hartnell. So there's a little bit of tension behind the scenes. Steven is there. Dodo's brand new. So you've got,
as seen in An Adventure Through Space and Time.
But what you've got is it's actually, if you were watching this at the time, I think it would be it would feel like a wildly experimental, because what you have is, some of these we've seen some of these, but what you have is right before, so 2 episodes before this, you have the Daleks Master Plan, which is a 12-part epic. So 3 months of an epic sort of storyline, people dying, companions dying, like just massive sort of huge space epic. Then you have the Massacre, in which which the first Doctor is basically written out, and Steven is the main character.
Oh,
which is it's a historic one set in like the French Revolution. It's a very sort of almost Shakespearean costume drama. Like it's actually it doesn't exist, but in video form, but you can listen to it audio, and it works as a radio play. Then you have the Ark, which we've watched, which is sort of the classic space one. Then you have the Celestial Toymaker, which is the weird sort of out there in this. And then you have this one, a comedy Western. And then you have some weird it's stuff. Just like, this is just, and it's like, if you were watching these shows in your order, you'd be like, what the hell is going on? Like, this is like a wildly experimental. It's like, I don't know, you're more of an expert. What's like the wildly experimental Beatles album where they just went way off script, right? Or something like that.
I mean, Revolver sort of was. And then Sgt. Pepper's was the one that people talk about. But like, I think it was more like Rubber Soul and Revolver. Revolver had weird stuff.
This would be the Revolver of Doctor Who's the experimental phase.
Well, and actually probably happened in 1966 too.
Maybe they were inspired by Doctor Who.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there are themes on the show that we will talk about. Things relate one thing to the next. All the themes on this insufferable show. Things like other things are there.
That was
the lyrics. Not so good
more
there, but
church choiry. I feel like
that's how it sounded.
It was ethereal. It was very ethereal.
That was very haunting.
Haunting. Was it the haunting Torgo theme?
We are adherents of the repeating themes here. No, Not the Mind Probe. We like to talk about ideas and topics that thread through Doctor Who and all of our lives. And what did you want to talk about for this week?
You know what? Let's talk about pastiche, which is a delicious pastry.
I don't know that term. I mean, I know it, but I don't know what that means.
So, like when we spent the whole episode talking about satire, and then we didn't know what satire was, I imagine this will be. But if I understand it, as we each Google it, but I understand it.
I have it up now. So you say what you think.
So my thinking is a pastiche would be pulling together elements from a particular sort of genre or something like that. Of art and putting them all together into a new story, right? So sort of it's like, what are the elements of a Western that we all know from the hundreds of Western movies that have existed over time or whatever, and gunfights, barmaids, I don't know, poker games and song, I know, whatever it is, and then you pull that together and you create a new story using all of these elements. That's what I would say a pastiche is. How am I doing?
So I think that's pretty much right. Again, I've never known how the term is used, and I agree that I would use it like that. It sounds a little different when I read it. It's saying that it's really just it's an imitation of another work, artist, or period, which is what you're saying. But I feel like one of the things that you're bringing to it, which I also have in my head, is, and I don't know if this is just onomatopoeia, but you're adding in almost like collage into pastiche, like you're pulling these elements together. And I think it says it's an artistic work in a style that imitates another work. So it's a pastiche of 18th century style. Like it doesn't necessarily mean that it's like pulling these different things and putting them together. It's an imitation of that style. But I agree that in my mind, it does mean that like we often say it's a pastiche of these different things. But like, I don't know that that's correct. Probers, write in and tell us how we're
contact
using
us.
But
Using many.
But at any rate, you're talking about a work, these episodes that are evocative of some other style or period.
Doctor Who does a Western,
right?
And it is sort of I feel like this is a thing that Doctor Who does, and there'll be different eras where they do it more or less. Certainly we've seen some of the Tom Baker ones in the Phil Hinchcliffe era that were Doctor Who does horror movies, like classic horror movies. You've seen Doctor Who does comedies. They've got, I mean, I don't know, maybe Dinosaurs on a Spaceship. Was that a pastiche of like, I don't know. I mean, so it's like, but it's interesting. It's like shows just being like, let's just try another genre, right? Like whatever you're saying. And maybe it works in Doctor Who, although it clearly has not worked on these two episodes. But I know it's very interesting. It's like, what is the function of I'm trying to think of other shows that do it quite as regularly. I mean, every once in a while it'll be like, we'll do a musical episode or let's do one set but it's,
well, News Radio would famously do one every year. That when they would do like the Titanic.
Right. So for those folks who go, it's on. Actually, I believe it's Amazon Prime now in America. You can go and watch the News Radio.
By the way, breaking Google news. The reason why, we both really thought it also was used to be like a hodgepodge or a medley of things is because that is a secondary definition of the word.
I know some stuff.
Both are true. It both means something, a work that imitates another artist or period, but also a work that consists of a medley of pieces from various sources.
So let's use the things we have the most knowledge of, which are News Radio and Doctor Who.
Yes.
Like, why
did Benson ever do a pastiche of anything?
Benson used to do 2-part murder mysteries. There's one set on a boat. There's one in the government, where they were literally just the cast somewhere, and someone would get murdered, and Benson would solve the murder. So it does happen. But what is the function of the pastiche? Why do we want to do it?
I think in episodic TV, I think there are two functions. One is to just break things up, to do something different. They're looking for something different to do. Or three functions. They're looking for something different to do. The other one is you don't do it right away. You do it after the show's been running for a while, and you feel like people have both the writers of the show have a very strong idea about who all the characters are.
You have to know the people.
And the audience really knows these characters. So then taking them and putting them in this completely other scenario, it sort of like underscores this fact of like, hey, Tony Danza from Who's the Boss is the same no matter where he is. I don't know if they did it. That'd be great if they did. Yeah. But like News Radio, those characters.
Oh, the famous Who's the Boss that was My Dinner with Andre? I mean,
yes. But like News Radio or Community is like, hey, these archetypal characters, like we can put them anywhere, and it's just kind of interesting and fun, and like we can. It's almost like this improv prompts where it's like, put them here and let's see what happens.
But
here.
Is that what Community?
But I think the third reason is sorry. Then the last one is similar to the first one of like just something to break it up. Is I think sometimes these shows do them because they are themselves bored and have a lot of money, and they're like, wouldn't it be kind of fun to do this? And then we could all dress up in these costumes, and like we're a big enough show that we can just do it. Let's
and
just
people
do
will
it.
Be like, okay.
And it's like event TV in that time. They would be like, oh, everyone's talking about. It's a different. Everyone talks about it. Like
you've seen Community, the whole Community series, right? Are those pastiches? Because like is the paintball episode, the Modern Warfare one, where they touch on so many action movies? That in my head is not it's not like Community does action movies. It's like Community does Community and references action movies and jokes about action movies. But they're like, it's not like we're trying now to do a hardcore action movie. Whereas Gunfighters is like, we're going to do a Western now. This is a Western.
Yeah, but they're also playing at it too. They make fun of aspects of the Western. One of the questions here, lower down on the Google page, is what's the difference between a pastiche and a parody? So, like, because I do think when News Radio, I haven't
Google
read that link.
It's like, I don't know.
The pastiche just literally means to combine them or paste them together. A parody imitates the manner, style, or characteristics of a particular literary work and deflates the original by applying the imitation to a lowly or inappropriate
subject. Making fun of it in some levels. That may be parody.
So maybe some of those. Yeah. So a pastiche is more like that. But so in terms of the purpose of it, I don't know. It could have a function or purpose to say like, hey, we think these characters could kind of fit into this era, and we think this would be interesting. But I think it's more done out of boredom and the need to try different things and be like, let's throw this up. For example, nowadays, more narratively driven long form TV shows, I don't think you have these sort of like, hey, let's throw in an episode where they leave and become Renaissance painters for an episode. It's like, no, they don't they just stay on the thing, and they have less episodes per season. And they just finish it.
I mean, they just want, that's true. I mean, you got to fill things. But what's interesting is like, okay, so Doctor Who though is, it's not like, oh, well, we got to do something to break out of the box. I mean, the show's constantly out of the box, right? They can like, we can be anywhere, anytime, do anything. So it's very interesting. It's like, okay, we're going to try a Western thing. And it's like, well, we've been on for 60 years, so we probably were going to get around to it a couple of times.
Yeah. Well, because they just have stuff to do. Like they have to fill, like they have to think of another episode, and they have to do something. I mean, I don't want to.
It doesn't comment on, right? I mean, so neither the Town Called Mercy, unlike sort of Modern Warfare, the paintball episode, or some of the Community does the Law and Order parodies and stuff like that. There's a little bit of commentary almost on them in some ways, whereas this is just like, hey, okay, we're gonna do this now, and what do you expect in a Western? Okay, this. What do you expect in a I don't know, in a screwball comedy? What do you expect in this?
It's just like, let's put our characters here, see how they would interact in this situation. It could comment on it in that your characters, being who they are, might act differently in a Western than your traditional Western characters, and in doing so, you're sort of commenting on the Western. I think it doesn't go to parody until you really start pushing that and kind of undercut it a little bit. And
what's too bad, I mean, so what obviously, so I think, folks, if you're I'm going to throw out another wild thing here that you may not have realized is, like, I'd say, Porter, we're both big fans of Community. I think Community is one of the most brilliant been on in the last few decades. Okay. One of the things that Dan Harmon, who's the creator of Community, talks about is, he said, when we do these things, these sort of parodies, pastiches, whatever, like the paintball episodes or something like that, he's like, it was always a rule of like, you can't just, well, they're in a wacky Western thing and then just that's it, right? It's like it had to move the plot along, or they had to character development, right? Something usually happened to the characters in the context of this that moved them forward or something like that. Contrast that to News Radio, which those parodies were very funny. They did one where they were in space, one where they were on a Titanic. but they were
just
out.
asides.
Yeah.
They were
It wasn't like the next episode. They were like, "Hey, remember when we were all in space?" It's like, I mean, news radio had a tone of they could do anything. I mean, it was ridiculous already. So there's a tone of that. I don't know. I'm not as familiar in genre fans who watch our podcast or listen to our podcast. Maybe you familiar. My understanding is like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which I've never actually watched, did like a musical episode. They were very supposed to be people loved, and I don't know. I don't know if that was if they acknowledged that was like, this is weird. We're all singing, or if they were just like, it's an episode where we're singing and just deal with it, everybody, and like. It'd be great, by the way, if there were just a caption that came up at the beginning. It was like, hey, this is an episode where we're all singing. Just deal with it, everybody.
So there was an episode of Scrubs where it was a musical episode, and the way they incorporated that, and I don't know. By the way, to your point, I don't know if incorporating it into the reality of the show makes it one thing or the other. I don't know. But Scrubs did, and what it was is that they had a patient that week who was a Broadway singer and was having neurological problems. So how they got into it is that like she was imagining this essentially, and because the whole show of Scrubs had to do with being in the head of the doctors, it sort of like then they were all imagining this. And anyway, so they did sort of lightly gave it a reason, like this is why we're doing this.
Yeah. And I mean
but I don't know what that changes about it. I don't
well,
know.
that was
it certainly made it. They were not parodying musicals, like because I've listened to a podcast about with the creator and some of the actors of that show about it, and they loved musicals. Like they were like, we were so happy to do this. We really enjoyed musicals,
I mean, it's like,
so we were happy to do
and again, this is the versatility of Doctor Who, and maybe just like I mean, it's Doctor Who is just like, okay, we landed in a Western and now we're going to be in a Western, versus like you compare it to like Star Trek The Next Generation, which again is a brilliant sci-fi show, but if they wanted to do this, they had to go in the holodeck and be like, we're trapped in 1950s Earth, and like, or the original Star Trek had the one where they slightly unbelievably went to a planet that had somehow built itself around 1930s gangland Chicago or something.
Oh, really?
And it's like it's a great episode called "The Piece of the Action." And it's very good, but it is like it's pretty implausible that they basically like we wanted to do a fun gangster thing and it's kind of a comedy or whatever. And so there's a planet where they just built around this culture, and you're like, okay. But I mean, Doctor Who, the flexibility is that you can do over 60 years, I guess you're just going to end up doing everything, and all you had to do is just plop your characters down in it. So maybe there's less of like it needed to have a point because the series is so unbound. It doesn't need to have that much explanation as to why we're going to suddenly do this other thing.
I just wanted to mention that my definition of the difference between parody and pastiche is from a blog called literaryness.org. It's literary theory and criticism. It's an article called Postmodern Use of Parody and Pastiche by Nasrullah Mambrol. And I wanted to mention that. So cite your
sources, because a lot of people using our podcast for academic research are going to need to know if we're using, are they citing us or are they citing our sources? Fair point.
That's right.
If you're using our podcast for academic research, by the way, yikes. We should speak in more quotable.
Well, if you are, then I think you should have to defend your thesis with us too.
Yeah.
Not just with your advisors.
Yeah, we should be in the room. I'll travel. I'll go wherever you're writing your thesis. If it's nice. If it's not nice, I won't go.
I'll go wherever it is, as long as it's maybe Caribbean islands.
Really nice. Like that.
There are 300 official Doctor Who television stories. We have ranked 144 of them. We're now going to rank these. All right, I will start with a town called Mercy. I didn't like this. I put this low. It wasn't that bad, but I decided I just didn't really like it that much. So I put it down below. I found a good spot for it, which is right with the Curse of the Black Spot, which I also didn't really like. And similarly a NuWho. And so that is 128 out of the 146 stories.
That is in the crapper, as they say.
It is below the Black Spot. It's right above Dragonfire and Doctor Who. But the ones I put above it, I was like, well, as we've discussed many times, I have Curse of Fenric down there. So it's definitely going above that. But also other things like always talk about Delta and the Bannerman. And then I thought it was about some other NuWho ones that I have down below: Boomtown, The Long Game. I have actually Dalek. I didn't really like. You really like Dalek, and I don't. New Earth and The Curse of the Black Spot. And I was like, you know what? I enjoyed this less than all of those. Like so there it goes. So that's where that one is. The Gunfighters. It's really easy where to tell you where I put that, and that is number 146 of 146.
Wow, dead
it
last.
Really annoyed me. I put it dead last. I thought about some of these others, and I was like, it's probably just in the moment. I'm sure a lot of ranking comes with like just when I watched these, but I was just like, I don't like it. I just don't like it.
White hot rage that you experienced while watching it.
So 146. Wow. I have a new bottom of the
low.
barrel.
We have reached a new low in this podcast, which I'm sure our fans say every time they listen to it. No, it just goes from pit to pit.
And to your point, that was without reading your Doctor Who compendium.
Yeah, you should rewrite it. It probably would not obviously resurrect the show.
I'll just put a little like ditto under it. It's like, yes, everything you're saying.
The Doctor Who Celebration reprint annotated by Porter. And that would be the only thing in it. We would resell it and it would just have ditto under the cover.
But I should do it now while I'm not done. So it'll just be like, I didn't see that one. I don't know. Haven't seen that one.
Who is this guy? I don't know that doctor. They're doing a little better for me. Our big disagreement is going to be on the Gunfighters, but A Town Called Mercy, yeah, unremarkable. I actually, even hearing you talk about it, I was like, maybe I should go even lower. It's not bad. I like the maybe just the scene we had the clip of like Amy shooting the gun accidentally. It moves along at an okay pace. Actually, I think I was watching. I was just like, oh, it's over. Oh, all right. Not enough happened. So I've got it at now by the end of the world, Victory of the Daleks. I got number 81. Probably could even be lower. And probably, I should just look at it. I'm like, well, I don't know. Anyway, it wasn't terrible. Gunfighters, I got higher. Like I said, I resurrect the Gunfighters. I think it's funny. And I think there's something about this.
Although you famously don't have a sense of humor. I mean, we should mention that.
I'm a disaster when it comes to humor. I think part of it is seeing Hartnell in something where he's having a good time and it's in being funny. It's like, especially the behind the scenes and stuff, and it's like, oh, Hartnell. I think Hartnell is very good at being a comedic actor. I think he's enjoying himself. And you don't get too many of the line flubs and stuff like that because he's really like it. So I've got the Gunfighters at number 31, right by The Lodger, which is also another comedy Doctor Who. But again, I think as I say, the bar for me was set so low, like
right.
It somehow rescued itself. So yeah, I got number 31. So when you got a toe tapper, like the Ballad of the Last Chance Saloon, which I listened to in the car. I don't know if with the windows down, just like going through neighborhoods and stuff, and it's a good song.
Well, listen, you can find. Oh, sorry. Let's see how that works out. Wildly different rankings. That may be now the biggest difference. We'll have to check that out. So the supercomputer, my bottom of the barrel does bring down the Gunfighters to 98 out of 146.
Not unfair.
So I'm just
saying. I mean, let's be honest. For me, it's okay. But if someone was like, "Hey, can you recommend a good story to watch?" and they weren't like, and it'd be sort of a badly put together Western, if anything but that, then it would probably be
you could ask them, do you like badly put together Western?
Do you like pastiches? Because we brilliantly explained what one is.
No, I like parody. Well, then that's not for you. This isn't it. A Town Called Mercy shows up at number 108 out of 146. You can go to mindprobe.show, our website, where you can see all our rankings. You can see me, John's, or the combined ones. You can also subscribe to the show after I fix the links. That's apparently a problem. I need to look into this.
Yeah, who has the time?
If you're having, how about this? If you're having problems subscribing to the show, then how would you be hearing this?
Yeah.
I'll have to think about what I was about to ask. But if somehow you're having problems subscribing to the show,
say nothing, and we'll eventually get around to you. We're going to start surveying people one by one because we go the extra mile for our fans.
Yeah, I'll have to think about this. Well, anyway, if you could subscribe to the show, and that's something
you're
you can
recalculating the differences.
I'm going to check it out.
This is exciting.
It is a difference of 115 in ranking, and that is the new biggest difference of.
This is the rift that is
Curse
tearing this podcast apart. This is the one. This is
Curse of Fenric would be the other one. Let me find where that is. I think that was the previous biggest.
66 is the Cave of Androzani. 61.
Curse of Fenric is 96. Yeah. So yeah, this is the new one. The Curse of Peladon also.
The nadir of our relationship.
Why did you like the Curse of Peladon so much?
That's a good one. It's got Alpha Centauri. How can you not love that one?
Bad Wolf Parting the Ways. I also did. Basically, all the ones that I didn't like, you're like, no, I think they're pretty good. I'm like, screw you, John.
I knew it. I knew this would fall apart. Honest.
John, you have anything else to say about our website or what's coming up next week?
You should look at our website, people, or YouTube, or podcast things. In terms of what's coming up,
yes.
So again, not reaching far into the well to figure out commonalities here, but we've got I think we're on the penultimate Amy Rory story. So everybody start to get your little tear ducts ready. We have the Doctor comes back down to Earth and spends some time with Amy and Rory, and we have this the cubes, the slow invasion of the cubes in the power of 3. There's a lot of meaning to that story, but basically, yes, the power of 3. And so I've paired that with, and see if you can find a link here, the 3 Doctors. A 3. So there's 3s in all of these things. The 3 Doctors is the 10th anniversary story, and it is it's going to be Porter's first multi-Doctor story, which becomes, and I want, it's part of the reason I had this.
It was like a special.
Yeah, it was a big special. The first time earlier Doctors had come back, first and second, join the third for an adventure. It's got a lot of Brigadier, so you're going to enjoy it. I think you're going to like this one. But I had to get this in here because we're coming up on the big 50th anniversary. And so I had to get you familiar with this concept of the multi-Doctor story. It's just an exciting one coming up. Yeah.
You got to ease me into things. As always, thank you for the
web of considerations that goes into programming. And I have to understand what you know and what you like and all. It's just a lot.
So it's so tough. You carry a heavy load, you know.
Heavy lies the head that wears the Doctor Who podcasting headphones.
It's really tough for you, and I thank you for all the and your nation thanks
when you
for your
forced me
service.
This. I didn't want to do this. You just said, let's do this podcast. I'm like, all right.
You got assigned. You showed up at the draft board, and you got handed like stamp section 5.8. You're gonna be running a Doctor Who podcast.
80 episodes later.
Oh my God!
Here we are. We've really committed to this. Bye, folks.
Please never play that song again for me. Mindprobe.show.